Welcome to Whistle While You Work, the podcast where we share practical tips, strategies, inspiration and motivation to help you find joy in the job you're doing and find the work you were born to do.
We're your hosts, Emma Howard and Cheryl Miller, and in this podcast we'll be bringing you interviews with freelancers, entrepreneurs, best-selling authors and people just like you that lean in, lean out, change careers or quit altogether in the pursuit of meaningful work that aligns with who they are.
In this week's episode, which is the first ever of the podcast, we will be sharing the whole life system that underpins our retreat, our coaching and other resources that you can find at reboot.global. So let's do this.
Absolutely. So we thought it might be helpful for you guys to understand a little bit about, I suppose, who we are and how we met. Which sounds like we're a couple and we're not.
Shall I introduce you?
Absolutely, that would be
okay. So I should have thought about this beforehand, really. So Emma Howard is a brilliant HR professional, has been working in HR for some time, initially in recruitment, but latterly working with executive career planning, executive coaching, learning and development, talent and succession. So Emma kind of knows everything there is to know about how people get along in their careers, what a good CV looks like, why people are kind of like stuck in a rut, stuck in the jobs that they don't want to be doing. And Emma's going to be one of our lead coaches, I guess, from a reboot perspective.
Absolutely. And I'll introduce Cheryl for you, although she was scared to say how many years I've been in HR because she was scared it would make me sound old. But Cheryl is really interesting because although she would call herself technically by trade an accountant.
A boring accountant.
You're not a boring accountant at all. So Cheryl is like a kind of human catalyst. So there's no one in Birmingham that this lady doesn't know. But what she essentially does is builds up, I suppose, careers that look quite different from anybody else's. So she has been a Big Four trained accountant. Well, she is. She's also been a financial controller. She's also been en route to CFO. And she's also stepped out and managed very large change programs for some really huge businesses, actually, in the Midlands and in the UK. So she has a great understanding of what makes big businesses tick, and what she then does is applies that to smaller businesses. So she's set up and overseen a couple of startups now, which we'll talk to you about at different points in the podcast. So essentially, if you think about the difference between us, Cheryl helps you decide kind of where you want to go and what you want to do, and I help you decide how you're going to get there. So hopefully some complementary skills.
Absolutely. Emma will look into your soul. That's how I always describe it.
Not deliberately. And sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I'm trying to look away. Yeah. But we met how many years ago now? 6?
Yeah, about 6 years ago. Yeah.
So we met in a very, very large business, which we both really enjoyed working at. Cheryl was brought in to head up a massive finance change program.
Yeah.
And I was the HR BP there.
Yeah, and we bonded over a love of shoes.
We did, because you can tell a lot about people about their shoes.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of grown into a much longer friendship that really, I suppose, has quite a lot of professional overlap now.
Yeah,
and that's why we wanted to put our heads together and share some of our thoughts with you.
And create this amazing reboot program.
Absolutely.
So why is this podcast called Whistle While You Work? So there's a little story behind it, and Emma has got an alternative name for it, but it's not clean. So I'm just going to go into why it's called Whistle While You Work. So one day I was filling up at the petrol station, and very, very early in the morning, probably about 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm filling up with petrol, probably about to set off on the motorway somewhere, some far-flung destination, and I'm filling up and I can hear somebody whistling. Bearing in mind it's really early, there's hardly anybody around, and I look round the side of the pump, and there's this guy whistling, and I think almost literally without thinking I kind of said, "Is that you whistling?" And he literally kind of said, "Oh, sorry, yeah, I do it all the time. I whistle all the time and I don't even know I'm doing it." And you know what? It kind of just really stayed with me, I think, for that day and kind of beyond. And I just thought, how cool is that like literally you are so happy in your day-to-day life that you are literally whistling and you don't even know that you're doing it. So whistle while you work. No, it's not about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's really about being so happy that you're kind of in your flow. You know, you've got your mojo.
Absolutely.
And you're so happy you could literally go about whistling. And whistle while you work, obviously, because, you know, work for a lot of people isn't the thing that necessarily makes them happy. happy. But, we absolutely believe that it can be. And so that's why I want to call this Whistle While You Work.
Completely. Now, we have given you a warning that my alternative name isn't clean, and I'm not going to have profanity on here until at least episode 5. But I was going to call it What the Bleep Are You Talking About, largely because when Cheryl first told me the story, I thought that he was going to be a serial killer and would murder her. But on a serious note, there is something around, I think so many people that I certainly work with see work as something to get through. And actually, we're trying to help you bring a bit of joy back into it. And as we said at the beginning, find some joy in the work that you're doing at the moment and the job that you have, and get happy in that as far as you can. And then also let us kind of help prepare you in lots of different ways for the work that actually you were born to do, which sometimes doesn't have anything to do with your job.
Absolutely. So, when we were kind of thinking about the podcast and thinking about the need, we were kind of reminded of, I guess, a few stories, and there's kind of just the one or two actually that I wanted to share. So I'm going to try to kind of like keep names out of this so that people are completely anonymous, because obviously they don't necessarily want to know that, people know that they're not necessarily happy in their work. But quite a few years ago, so maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, I came across somebody in the workplace, and we had arranged a team building event, and we were going to a cookery lesson. So a team building event onto this like cooking class, really good fun. And there was a guy that was just really, really into it. I mean, he just knew everything. He probably knew more than the person that was actually teaching the cooking course. And I remember saying to him at the time, have you ever thought about doing something, in cooking? He was actually an accountant by profession, would you believe? So I kind of said, have you thought about doing anything in that line of work? And he kind of said no. But interestingly, literally about 6 months ago, I got a message on LinkedIn from this person, literally saying, do you remember that team building event when you said, are you sure you're supposed to be an accountant and not, a cook or whatever it was? I can't even remember what it was I'd said to him, but he said in this message on LinkedIn that it had stayed with him literally all of these years, and he was just getting back in touch to kind of like find out what my thoughts were, because he was now thinking about a career change, and people were kind of telling him he was crazy. And it was just really interesting. So there is something about, there are a lot of people stuck in roles that maybe they don't feel they fit. And that's part of why we've created this podcast, basically.
Absolutely. And there's something really interesting that we will explore in one of our later kind of sessions around how so many of us get caught into jobs that we feel are socially acceptable. And I think it really happens a lot for people who perhaps are type A and perfectionist and have followed that route of perhaps getting good school results and then going to university and then, what do I need next in a graduate program? And I think, that kind of challenge of somebody having the bravery to say, no, I want to do something different, it can be really frightening for the people, and that's probably why he's getting a lot of pushback.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, actually. So the kind of instance that I've talked to you a couple of times about, and I will change the details of this one because kind of details change to protect the terminally bored. I've done a lot of work with people in lots of different companies, and also I have kept up kind of a coaching and mentoring network separately as well. So I was once doing some work with someone around going for a promotion that this person really felt was the next step for them and kind of was ready to go for. And what became fascinating was that we would talk about what they had to do to get the interview, what they had to do to get the job, etc., etc. And they just find themselves self-sabotaging at every single point. So they'd be truculent in meetings, or they'd be difficult, or they'd just be off. And when I spent a lot more time with this person, they actually didn't want to do the job that they were doing, let alone stepping up a level. And, it's interesting, it was a guy in that case, and the kind of pressure that he felt to, be seen as an alpha male and to provide for his family and to do that step up. Actually meant it was really difficult for him to work out which bits of his job he really enjoyed. Now, interestingly, he's left that organisation now, gone sideways and done something else and gets that balance. But I thought that was something really interesting, because traditionally we talk about women, here we talk about you kind of struggling to have it all. And that again is something we'll be talking about at a kind of later date, around what are those kind of, I suppose, gender roles that we often feel we're playing in the workplace.
Absolutely. I mean, there's that just reminded me of this really really good example of a young finance newly qualified accountant. So I think back many, many years at a company where, we had a really big sort of like finance graduate development scheme. We're really proud of some of the people that we recruited, and we recruited this guy, and he was like seen as a really high flyer in this organisation, a rising star. And I think, because the finance development scheme was fairly new as well, we wanted to make sure that we kind of like retained the best. Yeah. And then he qualified, and then he said that he wanted to leave. And I was like personally devastated, so he said he wanted to leave. And when I had the conversation with him about why, what was it that we weren't providing, his rationale, and he thought about it a lot, but his rationale was that he wanted to go to a smaller organisation, so still working in finance, but wanted basically, more broad experience, and he kind of just felt that he'd get that in a smaller organisation. And to be honest, he'd probably get a better work-life balance as well. And I remember at the time thinking, really? But now when I kind of look back on it with all of the years of wisdom now, I can see why that absolutely made sense. And, it's not all about the big C-suite jobs that we kind of think it always is. A lot of people in those roles aren't happy at all. So
absolutely. I think I've said to you before, I always say to anyone I work with, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because I'm about to go a little bit woo-woo now, guys, but whatever energy you put out there into the universe is normally what comes back to you. Yeah. So there's something really important about being clear around why you're doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And one of the pieces of advice, I suppose, that someone has kind of given to me, or certainly I've passed on before, is that, a job, if it is just a job for you, takes up so much of your time. It's really difficult to be in an environment where you can't truly be yourself. And I think, something where you can actually bring your true self to work. I know that's a real buzzword at the moment, bringing your authentic self to work, is something that is just crucially important, because who wants to end up, fabulously rich in that corner office, but realising that actually you've been doing this over the past 25 years for nothing.
Yeah.
And I think, really interesting, that we are seeing such an increase of people starting to examine that before they get to that point.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is some of the people that we'll be talking to at different points.
Yeah. I think
sessions.
Yeah, I think the whole thing about, people doing roles that they think they have to, or because of the kudos or the social acceptance, is a biggie. I remember when I was at EY, so I qualified with EY a long time ago, and I distinctly remember two people that qualified. I think they were in the year above me. And one of them, basically, as soon as they qualified as an accountant, they then left to become a nurse. That was one of them. And the other one, again, as soon as they qualified, they left to become a vicar. So completely different. And obviously they felt
but in different ways.
Yeah, but it was really interesting. There are those that kind of just carry on the road that they think they have to go, and those that kind of actually follow their heart. So we'll definitely be talking more about that.
It's interesting, isn't it? When I always feel really envious of people who've got like massive callings like that. And I had a very good friend of mine who had always wanted to be a nurse, and she'd be an exceptional nurse actually. And I remember we were in our mid-20s, and I said to her, will you go back to school and do it? And she said no, because I'll be 30 by the time I qualify. And I said, well, you'll be 30 anyway, so you may as well, God willing, you may as well do something you love.
Yeah.
Now, she's kind of 15 years on from that now, and is actually, hasn't taken that leap, and that's completely her choice. But I think there are crux moments at all of our lives that sometimes overlap with our career choices. And I think that's some of the stuff that we're going to talk about, I think, particularly with the system.
Absolutely.
That we're going to discuss.
Absolutely. That's a good segue.
Thank you.
So the system is something that that it's really kind of the brainchild of Emma, and we've kind of like developed it, I guess, over the last sort of period of time, really. So the system that we have, basically, we will talk through in quite some detail over the next few weeks, the system that we use, both in the retreat and in the coaching. But it's really a whole life system that kind of looks at various aspects of one's life. So this, although the podcast is called Whistle While You Work, it's not just about the work, because obviously life is about more than work. So the system tackles 10 different aspects of your life. And so where it kind of starts with almost like the foundation, which if you've ever done any sort of business training, you've come across Maslow's hierarchy. Yeah. Maslow's got a lot to answer for, I tell you that much. But we kind of, the system is kind of similar in that it kind of starts off with your kind of almost like your basic needs from a life perspective. And so the base layer is what we call make a living. And so in that layer we have work.
Yep.
We have money or finances, I guess, in terms of like wealth. And then we also have health. And I guess for health, you can maybe look at that in terms of energy.
Yes.
So with the make a living strand, which I guess is kind of where I've tended to play in that space from a sort of coaching perspective, it's focusing on, are you in the right career? Does it align with kind of like your goals? Where are you trying to get to? How do you get to the next rung of the ladder? How do you ask for a promotion? How do you get a pay rise? Absolutely. All of those kind of very practical things from a work perspective. And then if we look at the money kind of box, then we're really talking about your finances in terms of wealth. So, what are the strategies that you've got in place to make sure that you've got some level of security, so that actually if you want to make some sort of career change, you've got some money in the bank so that you can actually do that kind of thing. And then with your energy, with your health, obviously, the whole body really, but, so mind, body and spirit in terms of where are you physically, what's your emotional kind of health and well-being like, and are you kind of like nourished and kind of getting the right energy to actually do the work that you need to do to make a living. So that's kind of that base layer is the make a living space.
Completely. And I think so many of us just get stuck there. It's a great place to be, and goodness knows I've been there. But you kind of then we almost think of it as stepping a level up. And that's in thinking around, okay, you're making a living. Mm-hmm. You're doing everything that we would advise you to on that. Fantastic. Money's coming in. Your brand is looking awesome. Fantastic. What does your life actually look like? So how are you making a life? And the things that kind of come across here, I won't go into too much detail because we will have separate ones on each of them. But the things like, what's your relationship like with your friends, your family? Who are you spending your time with? What's your love life looking like? All the intimacy that you have in your life. And my particular favourite, kind of like fun. What are you doing that's making you laugh? So one thing you will notice as you stick with us, hopefully through this journey or even meet us, is that we laugh a lot.
We do.
And that's because actually life's too short not to. So making a life is all about actually what do you do that adds that joy, that extra piece. What are the bits of your life that actually, the relationships that sustain you? Are you giving enough focus to your personal relationships as you are to your work ones? Let's be frank. Do you need to do a bit of a rebalance? Is it things like how do you actually open yourself up and be a bit more vulnerable?
Yeah.
So obviously everybody has now hopefully read Brené Brown, but the amazing things that come out if you actually start having proper conversations with people and getting that type of connection. Mm-hmm. So you've made a living, that's then how to make a life.
Yeah.
We then move on to something a little bit bigger than you.
Absolutely. So make a living, make a life. And then actually the next almost like rung of the ladder is to make a difference. So, life for a lot of people, and I hear this phrase a lot, people wanting to give back. Yeah. So they're kind of saying, we want to give back. But actually, what does that look like? There are all sorts of ways that people can give back. But actually, what are you doing in terms of your contribution to the rest of society, to people that perhaps haven't had the best start in life? What does your contribution look like? So make a difference is really all about not just your internal and kind of like your family and kind of, making a living, but it's actually giving back and contributing.
I'm thinking about something which I think you and I are both really passionate about. How do you make yourself a better version of you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there is something really interesting, and I often find this when I give feedback to people or we talk about interviews and things. So often, we feel so attacked, and certainly I do when people kind of give me feedback. And that's often because actually we're not doing a huge amount of learning ourselves.
Yeah.
And that making a difference piece is around how do you be the change that you want to see? Yeah. How do you have a clearer idea of your mission, the things that really matter to you? This is something that Cheryl's actually great at, and we'll get into this kind of further on. But how do you do that learning? Because what that then leads you to is essentially kind of the top rung. And we call that run kind of make it you. But essentially, this is around living in line with your authentic self and your authentic values. That can be around you having a mission. That can be around you being really clear around what your priorities are. It could be around you having fun. And that can really change quite a lot as well. So to give you an example, you might have somebody who says, right, okay, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. Okay, great. They haven't really examined why, but they move through the make a living. They kind of do everything that Cheryl's teach them to, all the tricks that I've taught them to. They get their promotions, they get their jobs, fantastic. They've got their money, brilliant, right? They then think, right, okay, I make a life. So now that's obviously time I need to have the family and children. Yeah. So I go out and I meet the appropriate person, and then I have the children, and then I think, actually, I'm now perhaps a partner in my law firm, so it'd be really good if I made a difference. Yeah. So what I will do is start mentoring people further down the track from me, and and giving back and turning up at all these big events, sponsoring my old university, always a favourite one, and then often what happens is you get to the make it you piece and you realise that actually you never wanted to be a lawyer at all.
Yeah.
What you wanted to be was a musician, and you're now in kind of midlife and thinking, oh my God, actually how are all these things connected and linked. And that may cause you to have a bit of a change around actually how you want to make a living or what that life looks like or what making a difference looks like for you. But you can see that they're all connected, and that's why we will be having kind of quite separate sessions on each of them. But what this system allows you to do, and we'll talk a bit more about the fantastic retreats that Cheryl set up in a second, but it enables you to really focus on which bit matters to you at the moment. Because although we talked about kind of upper rung, there's no hierarchy really involved in here, It's
a virtuous circle.
It's a virtuous circle in exactly the same way that I used to get really ratty with Ursula when he'd be like, bottom of the rung is like, food and water. Well, to be fair, if you haven't got those, you don't really care about, kind of self-determination. So we aren't saying that one is higher than the other here, but this system allows you to say, actually, okay, for this period of time, I feel there's something missing here. Or I feel that this is really on track. And that way we can coach you and support you and help you to get what you need.
Absolutely.
For your particular circumstance.
And the reason that we talk about it as being a system and kind of almost like a virtuous circle is because, we do change as we kind of like grow and progress. And so therefore, in terms of, you get to make it you, and you start to really understand, what it is that you really want in life and what it is that will make you really happy. And then that makes you basically revisit, all of the other areas.
Absolutely.
So, as Emma was saying, it might be that you want a completely different career. It might be that, you've gone through a divorce. It might be, whatever. But things do change, and that's why there's this whole kind of like revisiting it. I think there's an interesting stat around, the kind of age when people start to get really dissatisfied with their work. So, apparently the age is 36.
Oh my God, I've gone past it.
So
no offense to my boss, I'm fine.
So you're okay. But yeah, apparently 36, and then beyond 36 is the age when people start to feel really dissatisfied with their career, with some of the choices. And so, we would kind of say that that's probably, and certainly when we've started doing the reboot work, we've kind of found that, a lot of people that are kind of approaching that sort of 40 age mark are starting to question themselves and say, what have I done with my life? Am I happy? Am I doing the thing that I was meant to be doing? And so it is a really good time of life to kind of like revisit, all of the elements of the system.
Absolutely.
And kind of figure out whether, whether you're in the right space, basically.
Yeah, or we have had some really interesting discussions with perhaps people who are having shifts in that kind of make a life scenario. So I know a really big one for my mother, for example, was when I went to university. When I moved out, or certainly when, Leah has kind of moved out. There's something around what you do, what matters now. Well, your child still matters, but how do you change? It's a different you.
And also, how does your relationship change? So a lot of people talk about that, once they get to empty nester syndrome, what does that mean for their relationship? So as these kind of life stages change, then you revisit what's important in your life. Okay. So just to talk a little bit about the retreats that we're launching. So it's really exciting because we've got our first retreat coming up very soon here in the UK in Arundel, which nobody seems to know where it is.
No, everyone can't think it was in Spain.
It's just outside Brighton. So the first retreat, which is a 3-day retreat where we're talking about clarity. And we're talking about clarity really so that you can start to think about, what is that thing that makes you happy? What is that thing that's really important to you? And one of the things that I've kind of captured in my notes that I wanted to talk about here was, because it's something that I believe in, wholeheartedly, is it's one of Deepak Chopra's 7 spiritual laws of success, and it's the law of pure potentiality.
It's your favourite, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, and I think it's something, if I've met you in the last kind of 5 to 10 years, and we've spoken for more than about 10 minutes, I've probably started to ask you, what is it that you really love to do? What is it kind of that makes you tick? Because I genuinely believe, as Deepak says, there is the field of all possibilities, and it's just about tapping into what that field is. And one of the things that Deepak talks about is creating the silence, like through meditation, to actually tap into that field and understanding your potential. So certainly for us, kind of creating the space to do that, which is what we do in the retreats, really creates that space for you to kind of really connect to what is your potential. What is it that's possible? What are my dreams that I've perhaps crushed over the last 20 years? How can I revive those? And what might the future look like?
Absolutely. And I think, we've both been on retreats before, and I'm sure that many of you listening will have, or maybe it's your first time and you're feeling a bit kind of nervy about it, but what we really wanted to create was something that created that space for you, exactly as Cheryl says, but also gave you the space to think about what area of your life you really want to. So I have a bit of a saying that if any of you meet me, you will hear me say it, where I say it's really not about the job. Right. If you want to work on a business plan with Cheryl, you can. Equally, if you want to do some slightly more woo-woo stuff with me, you can. We kind of dial it up or down for you. So it's a very personal experience. And I think one of the best phrases that Cheryl has said is that they're in such beautiful locations, our retreats, that really if you want to sit there in your fluffy robe for the duration and do nothing,
absolutely,
that's exactly what you need. So, we put all the resources out there. But unlike a lot of retreats that I've been on, it isn't regimented, it isn't kind of, time bound for you. You can come in and take what you need out of it. And we're really excited to see what kind of, I suppose our first batch of retreatees feel about it. And we'll be getting some of them on to talk about it, actually.
Definitely, yeah. Okay.
Great.
Good. I think that's a wrap. That's pretty much what we got to do. So we really hope you enjoyed this first episode of the podcast. Tell all of your friends about it. Yeah, share it.
Please do. If you tweet it and share it, we'll change it to my name and we'll use the profanity. We're really keen. One of the reasons we wanted to do this is because we really would have liked this resource at different points in our lives. So please do, kind of connect with us, ask us anything. Come along to one of our retreats, come along to some of our taste days. Yeah. Cheryl's got some fantastic stuff online. My stuff is coming, which looks slightly different. Drop us a note, meet us for coffee.
Absolutely.
I prefer a wine, but you're on the road to Christmas. And we're really, really excited to kind of, I suppose, share some of our knowledge around how you can get to do the work, I suppose, it's really important to you.
Absolutely.
Rather than just, a job that pays the bills all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a saying that life is too short to do stuff. But I sometimes say, actually, life is too long.
If you're stuck in something you don't want to do.
It really is, especially given that, most people that are around now, they're in their 20s, are probably going to be working till their 70s. So do you really want to be doing...
that's a sobering thought. That's a sobering thought.
Do you really want to be doing something you don't love for the next 50 years? It's like, come on, people.
Exactly. So come, give us give us a call, give us a tweet, give us a like, let us know what you think, let us know what you'd like us to cover. We will be... laughing more in the other ones. It took us quite a long time to set up how to do this, but because we believe that everything's possible, we managed to do it today.
Absolutely.
But thank you for sharing this with us, and we'll speak to you all soon.
Thank you. See you guys.
Bye. Why is my head so large?
It just is.
Okay.